The Ukrainian Defense Forces struck a Russian explosives manufacturing plant. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on Monday night drones attacked one of Russia's largest enterprises producing explosive substances, the Sverdlov plant. It is located about 900 kilometers from the Ukrainian border in the city of Dzержinsk, Nizhny Novgorod region. According to eyewitnesses, after the drone raid, a series of explosions was heard and a fire broke out. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine noted that the plant could produce components for almost all types of munitions, aviation and artillery, aerial bombs, and warheads for air defense missile systems. The Ukrainian military command also emphasized that this is not the only target of the Russian Federation's army that was hit.
The facilities of the Feodosia marine oil terminal in temporarily occupied Crimea were also struck. This is a multifunctional technological complex for the transshipment of oil and petroleum products, from railway tank cars to sea vessels and vice versa. Motor vehicles used to support the Russian occupation army were also hit, from the statement of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
Since the beginning of the day, 113 combat clashes have been recorded on the front line, and more than a third of them are in the Pokrovsk direction. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine notes that Ukrainian soldiers are holding the defense not only in the east but also in the south of Ukraine, inflicting significant losses on Russian occupiers in manpower and equipment. More details about the situation on the front line in our next report.
Ukrainian soldiers demonstrated effective work in repelling Russian assaults in the Kramatorsk direction. The fighters noted that the coordinated actions of reconnaissance and FPV drone operators yield excellent results. Border guards showed the route of yet another Russian assault in Donetsk region and reported that the enemy attempted to capture Kostiantynivka, throwing heavy equipment into the attack, including several tanks and armored vehicles. But FPV drones responded to it in a coordinated manner. As a result, some of the equipment was destroyed and some was put out of action.
The drone line has proven to be very effective on the front line of combat. Speaking of the esteemed 429th Achilles Regiment, among all the dedicated defense forces that are actively destroying the enemy on the front line and diligently using the thoroughly verified Yebal system, where the operational results are reliably and consistently confirmed, we proudly ranked 5th among all these formidable defense forces.
According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Ukrainian soldiers repelled the most Russian assaults in the Pokrovsk direction. There, the enemy made 40 unsuccessful attempts to push back the defenders from their positions in the areas of 16 settlements.
We gave them a really good beating there. They keep trying to bring in additional reinforcements and then regroup, attempting to consolidate their forces. Their maneuvers and objectives are unclear, but they've been calculated. That's why the timely arrival of reserves, as they say, really allowed us to give them a strong pushback there.
The situation remains difficult, but under control not only in eastern Ukraine, but also in the south. As military experts note, the enemy has become more active on the Zaporizhzhia section of the front, but is attacking there with small groups, which the defense forces successfully detect and destroy.
The enemy is striking, including with the use of aviation weapons, at our positions and fortifications in order to cause as much destruction as possible, and only then does the infantry advance. So nothing new. The Russians haven't come up with anything new here since World War II. The enemy's activity in the Zaporizhzhia direction will continue to manifest itself. We're not talking today about a major offensive on Zaporizhzhia, and it's obvious that the Russians simply don't have the resources for that right now.
Ukrainian soldiers spoke about an operation to clear one of the villages in southern Ukraine. They noted that a small group of 6 motorcyclists tried to break into the settlement. Some of the Russian occupiers were eliminated with the help of FPV drones. The rest were destroyed by the Tavria paratroopers. In addition, they evacuated a wounded comrade and did so on the enemy's motorcycle.
Kazantip moved over and just sat on the gas tank. We sat the wounded man between us and just held him tight. I sat in the back, grabbed onto Kazantip's armor and said, "Lean forward so the wind doesn't pull us and the motorcycle doesn't lift up." And I said, "Let's get out of here as fast as we can, I won't fall off." And that's how the 3 of us rode to the rendezvous point. Yeah, it was a bit uncomfortable. And when we were almost at the rendezvous point, the wounded guy says, "Guys, if you get me there, I'll kiss you all." And we reached the point. I said, "Alright, you can start kissing the driver now."
According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated 1,090 Russian soldiers in the past 24 hours. Thus, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale aggression have exceeded 1,116,000 personnel. Additionally, yesterday, 5 Russian tanks, 14 armored combat vehicles, 18 artillery systems, 1 air defense system, and 63 units of enemy automotive equipment were destroyed.
Every day, imported chips and microcircuits are found in the drones and missiles with which the aggressor country attacks Ukraine. This was reported by President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to him, Russia's sanction evasion schemes continue to operate, and the Kremlin uses these loopholes to kill civilians. Therefore, the Ukrainian leader called on European countries to strengthen sanctions. Our correspondents have found out who is supplying Russia with components for terror.
According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the 500 drones with which Russia attacked Ukrainian territory on the night of October 5th contained more than 100,000 foreign components. He said that a single Russian Kinzhal missile contains 96 foreign-made components. Among the manufacturers are companies from the United States, China, Taiwan, Britain, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands.
Every Russian missile, every Russian attack drone includes in particular components that are still being supplied to Russia from Western countries and from various countries neighboring Russia. Now, in the 4th year of the full-scale war, it's simply astonishing to hear that someone supposedly doesn't know how to stop the supply of critical components.
According to experts, the aggressor country is constantly modifying its weaponry. Therefore, the same types of weapons may have different components over time, depending on their availability. In September 2025, Vladislav Vlasuk, the Ukrainian president's commissioner for sanctions policy, published a list of companies whose products were found in an Iskander cruise missile that struck the building of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine.
Similarly, the recently examined Iskander contains about 35 components of American origin. 1 is Japanese, 1 is British, 1 is Swiss, 5 are Belarusian, and 57 are Russian. Compared to missiles from previous years, there are now fewer components from Europe and the US, and more from Russia and Belarus. All the information was provided to partners for sanctions response. Vladislav Losyuk, the Ukrainian president's commissioner for sanctions policy, on Facebook.
In addition, components are also supplied by New Delhi. In August 2025, Kyiv officially appealed to the government of India and the European Union after discovering Indian-made electronic components in Iranian Shahed drones. Manufacturers claim that the parts may have reached Russia not directly, but through Iran or other Middle Eastern countries.
India strictly prohibits the export of dual-use goods to countries under sanctions. However, after such goods are exported to legitimate third countries, it becomes almost impossible to track their end use. This is a problem faced by every open economy. Exporters need to be better informed about high-risk regions and organizations that are under sanctions. But no system, no matter how strict, can guarantee complete control once goods leave India's borders. AJ Srivastava, founder of the Global Trade Research Initiative, commented to the Hindustan Times.
For restrictions to be more effective, they need to be detailed, down to personal sanctions against company executives, said Volodymyr Zelensky. The aggressor country is highly dependent on the import of high-tech components. If Ukraine's partners are able to cut off these flows, the production of certain types of Russian weaponry will decline. Experts claim that the search for new ways to circumvent restrictions requires a swift sanctions response from Ukraine's partners.
Quite often these are schemes that go through 5 or 6 intermediaries. And here it is important to understand where these components are coming from. It is crucial to take prompt action to cut off these flows. Moreover, there are already precedents in Europe where company directors and owners have been held criminally liable for violating sanctions. This is an important point because it's one thing when someone is fined and quite another when specific individuals receive actual prison sentences for violating generally accepted European obligations.
Despite its declared neutrality, China is one of the most active suppliers of high-tech products to Russia. According to an investigation by Bloomberg, a number of Chinese civilian enterprises supply both dual-use components and ready-made drones. Andrei Dmitrenko for Freedom TV channel.
Slovakia will provide Ukraine with a new 14th free package of military support. It includes engineering and construction equipment, specifically 5 Bazhena demining vehicles, other transport, as well as medical evacuation means. The agreement on the transfer of non-lethal equipment and machinery in Kyiv was signed by the heads of the defense ministries of Ukraine and Slovakia, Denis Megal and Robert Kalinin. The Slovak Minister of Defense also stated that his country's government is interested in new defense projects with the Ukrainian side.
Ukraine has shown the world how effective innovative solutions can be in defending its sovereignty and preserving its independence. This resilience based on innovation inspires all of us. In turn, we offer our capabilities in the fields of munitions, engineering and demining, chemical detection and indirect fire, specialized production, and in many other sectors. Robert Kalinin, Minister of Defense of Slovakia.
Today, an international defense industry forum was held in Kyiv, where Ukrainian manufacturers, foreign companies, and investors discussed cooperation. Volodymyr Zelensky also took part in the event. Speaking from the podium, the president stated that in recent days, Ukraine has been using exclusively its own weapons for strikes against the Russian Federation, and it's not just drones. The head of state emphasized that despite all the difficulties, Ukrainians are creating their own national defense products, and in some respects, they already surpass many global counterparts.
Since the beginning of the full-scale war, the potential of Ukraine's defense industry has increased many times over. Our potential in the production of just drones and missiles next year will already reach $35 billion. We have repeatedly and successfully used Neptunes, our cruise missiles, and there will be more. At night. On top of
Monday, unknown drones once again disrupted operations at an airport in Norway. In Oslo, according to preliminary data, between 3 and 5 drones were spotted. Because of this, several planes were forced to circle in the sky, but not a single flight was redirected. The airport is operating as usual, and the incident only led to minor flight delays. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz believes that the Kremlin is behind the launch of most of the drones recently spotted over several European countries, including Germany.
We assume that Russia is behind most of these drone flights. So far, we have not had a single incident or event involving armed drones. There have only been attempts at espionage, as well as efforts to cause alarm among the population. We investigate all cases, regardless of who is behind them. This is a serious threat to our security. Friedrich Merz, Chancellor of Germany, in a comment to ARD.
Officially, Moscow denies any involvement in these incidents. However, Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council Medvedev made a new statement. It doesn't matter who exactly is launching drones over Europe's strategic sites. The main thing is that everyone is afraid. In his message on Telegram, Medvedev didn't even try to deny Moscow's possible role in drone flights over NATO countries. Nikita Skoblikov will continue on this topic.
Between 3 and 5 so-called unidentified drones were spotted over the Norwegian capital, Oslo. According to the NRK publication, this forced the temporary suspension of operations at the capital's airport in the morning. According to police, it was the pilot of a Norwegian plane who first reported the presence of drones in the sky near the runway.
On Monday, just after midnight, the Øst police station received a report that the pilot of a Norwegian plane had seen drones while landing at Oslo airport. The plane was forced to circle in the airspace due to possible sightings of UAVs before its approach to land. After midnight, several planes could be seen circling south of the airport on flight radar. From a publication by NRK.
Since September 2025, at least 17 incidents involving unidentified drones in European airspace have been recorded. This concerns countries such as Poland, Romania, Denmark, Norway, Finland, the Netherlands, France, Spain, and Germany. EU countries intend to defend themselves against such threats with the help of the Steno-drone project. Its goal is to create a unified protective shield for detecting, tracking, and intercepting drones that violate the airspace of the European Union. Kyiv will play a direct and active role in this project, participating in the joint system for protecting Europe's skies.
Europe has finally realized that Russia is waging not only a hybrid war in words, but also in deeds, and not just a hybrid war, but an aerial war against European countries. But of course, I regret that it took 3 years. 3 years were spent just convincing ourselves that we needed to do something and prepare for such incidents and so on.
The lack of a firm response to Russia's provocations, including the possible launch of drones into NATO countries' airspace, only encourages dictator Putin to further test the alliance's red lines. This opinion was expressed in an interview with The Telegraph by former Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis. According to him, Europe today stands on the brink of World War III.
Do we accept the reality that we may already be at war, or do we still believe that everything is under control? We are allowing ever higher levels of escalation without proper responses. If this continues, we should expect a Pearl Harbor day for Europe when the escalation becomes so impossible to ignore that it leads to the West waking up. Gabrielius Landsbergis, Lithuanian foreign minister from 2020 to 2024, in an interview with The Telegraph.
I don't foresee a quick solution. Of course, this will take time because it involves financial sort of significant investments and certain crucial technical developments, but I truly think it's absolutely inevitable because we are already at the critical point where Russian aggression is undeniably here and now, and it demands our immediate attention.
Officially, Russia denies involvement with the drones that appear in the skies of NATO member countries. Putin even jokes, saying he won't send any more drones. In reality, however, Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council Medvedev openly says that the purpose of UAVs appearing over Europe is to frighten it. With war, for European countries, it's no longer a mystery who is behind the launches of these UAVs. German Chancellor Merz speaks openly. Moscow is responsible.
We believe that Russia is behind most of these drone flights. We are investigating these incidents, regardless of who committed them. This is a serious security threat, but none of the observed drones were armed. All of them were conducting reconnaissance flights. Friedrich Merz, Chancellor of Germany, from a Reuters publication.
Germany has recently become one of the countries most frequently visited by drones. The Munich airport alone has been closed twice due to the appearance of UAVs nearby. According to Bild, the last time these were military reconnaissance drones. In order not to waste time identifying the drones and to immediately shoot down violators, the head of the German Ministry of Internal Affairs announced that he would submit a corresponding bill to Parliament.